Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. Andrew Miller here on a Monday evening, back with you to talk about the Bulldogs once again. Really excited for another episode. We're going to be breaking down the Bulldog Tight End room as we continue our spring positional series, spring positional preview series, rather. Spring practice is obviously getting underway across the country right now, including in the SEC. Not yet for Mississippi State. I know the Bulldogs are doing some workouts and getting up to speed, but spring practices will be starting here within, I guess, the next week or so for MSU football. So we'll obviously have a lot more to talk about with the Bulldogs this spring in the coming weeks, but wanted to start breaking down the positions. We've gone through quarterback, receiver, running back. Time to talk about the tight end group. So we'll talk about that on today's episode. Also, just hit some news notes for MSU sports. I've got another thing we can hit if I think we need to keep the show going a little bit longer. But yeah, should have a lot of fun breaking down the Bulldog tight end room. I think some interesting pieces to talk about in that group for a room that's going to have a new starter, going to have a lot of new faces. But again, I think a pretty interesting room to look at going into this season. But glad to be back and here on the program. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notifications on so you do know when we do go live. And, of course, tell all the Bulldog fans you have in your life about what we're doing here at Mississippi State Live. Continue to grow the channel. And if you're wondering when we do go live, that would be Mondays at 6 p.m. Central Time, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. Thursdays tend to be our call-in show. We didn't do a call-in show last week just because, one, things have quieted down a little bit. It had mostly just been me on those shows, but also we just had way too much news to talk about on that episode for it to be a call-in show. But Thursdays, that's your opportunity to come be a part of the action. Give me your thoughts on MSU sports. Get a part of the conversation. Mondays is typically just kind of our breakdown episodes. But again, Mondays 6 p.m. Central Time, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. And of course, if you were not able to catch the show live, you have the opportunity to listen to us on your favorite audio platforms, minus Apple, which we are still figuring out. I've sent the messages out to try to get that resolved. Again, I don't really know why that's an issue. We are on Spotify if you want to catch the show after the fact. But again, I understand not everybody can be here for the live show and still want to be able to tune in. Obviously, we love having you on YouTube. Come over to the channel, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Give us the likes, give us the clicks. But we also understand that if you want to be able to catch the show after the fact, sometimes it's easier to do so on the go just by listening to it. So, yeah, catch us on your favorite audio platforms. We'll get Apple figured out as soon as we possibly can. Yeah, we'll just hit some Mississippi State notes to kind of start off here. And these are not football related. Obviously, basketball, we had the news. Look, they ended the regular season. Josh Hubbard scored 42 points, and State still loses to Georgia. I didn't watch hardly any of the game. I put on the last 7 minutes or so and kind of just had it on the second screen while I was watching golf. The team has just not been worth tuning into. Ultimately, it's been a frustrating season, was a failure of a season. We'll see what they do in the SEC tournament Wednesday night against Auburn. I would love to put the final nail in the coffin for that Auburn team, which, by the way, quick aside here. Can we talk about the fact that John Cohen, I think, is 0 for 4 in his career on making a successful hire after having to replace a big-time coach? Now, I should caveat, because anytime you have a coach who is a really successful coach for a program, who achieves more than is typical for a program, the odds are when you fire them, the next guy or girl is not going to do as good. That typically happens. There tends to be some regression to the mean. But you would think Cohen would have had one of these work out well. And you look, he had to make a hire after Mullen. He goes with Joe Moorhead. And I understand, people who are not from Mississippi State will look at the overall record and try to argue that that was fine. We all know, if you were following the program closely, it was not going well under Moorhead. It was not trending well under Moorhead. He had to replace Vic Schaefer. And look, Nikki McCray, obviously, rest in peace to her. That was a terrible situation. But going off the 1 year, and I understand we didn't get a full sample set, all that. And again, I know it's awful because she passed away. But the 1 year for the team she inherited, that team was poor. The team didn't work out. And you look at Auburn. He has to Bruce Pearl. You lose Bruce Pearl, and you basically get forced into promoting Stephen Pearl, and it's been a complete failure. I think the other one, oddly, it was him replacing himself because he was a great baseball coach at State. Andy Canizaro didn't work, and I get it. That one was off the field. There's probably another one in there that I'm forgetting about. Maybe he did one at Auburn that I'm forgetting in another sport. I don't think Auburn football, I could say that he's, he was replacing Brian Harsin, who he didn't hire. He made a stupid hire, but that wasn't the hire that he made. Again, you hire really successful coaches, odds are the next coach is not going to be as good. But for it to have been a situation where in every single one of those programs, things got sour really quick, not a great look for him. A related question, because we're going to talk about coaches that he hired, from Bobby Anthony here, longtime listener, thank you. We made a change with Lamonis and realized the potential of what we were capable of. Why does Jans and Purcell get another year? They have had 4. So, and Trey Clark coming right in. James made the tournament 75% of his season here. That's best in school history by 30%. I think this kind of getting into the point that I was making. Jans is in a really weird spot as a coach where there is no doubt his teams have left a lot to be desired in some ways. His first year is what it is. That team was about as good as you could have asked for. And even with that in mind, I kind of give him the next year as well, because if we're being honest, I know we all kind of put Sweet 16 expectations on the Jans' second season, so that would be the 23-24 team. In reality, like, that team was just the same team as the year before plus Josh Hubbard, which was good enough to be, when it was all said and done, safely in the tournament. We didn't really know that going into the SEC tournament, but they ended up safe when it was all said and done. And they won some big games. Beat Auburn, beat Tennessee twice. Beat Tennessee at a time the Vols were fighting for a 1 seed in the SEC tournament. That's one of my favorite games as a State fan. Cam Matthews absolutely posterizing that dude with the dunk. Ultimately, though, like, that team was still incredibly flawed. Like, yes, adding Josh Hubbard made them better. I think they all in all, they lost some dumb games in the non-con. They could have set themselves up better. To be clear, I'm not going to – the performance against Michigan State in the tournament was terrible. But I don't look at that team and say they should have been much, much, much better. Now, you go back to last year when it was the first time he really had to go hard in the portal. Kind of missed on a lot of those guys. Didn't miss as bad as you did this year. But it also helped. You had a nucleus in place. Keyshawn Murphy, despite how we feel about him now, ended up breaking out into a good player. You still had Cam Matthews to settle things, and obviously you had Hubbard in year 2. That nucleus, the core pieces of that team were guys who were back, and then everybody else was just sort of a role player. And if you had gotten more out of him, if that class had been what it was supposed to be, well, then that class, you're talking about a team that could have actually made a run in March. And look, maybe if Claudel Harris doesn't choose to take the last second shot, maybe you do end up winning. Maybe if Hubbard's the one who hits the shot, maybe you have a chance. Although Baylor physically dominated them in that game. It was that game, it was Hubbard keeping them in it, all things considered. A Baylor team that they should have had a physical edge over, that they didn't at all. This year, obviously, been a total disappointment. So I've kind of rattled through the years. You can look at almost every year except his first one and pick it apart in one way or another and say they should have been a little bit better. If you go big picture, you also have to acknowledge, the first 3 seasons, 20-plus wins, NCAA tournament appearances. You've not done that. Obviously, your peak under Stansbury, yeah, you were doing that year in, year out. He didn't do it to start his tenure. It was also a weaker SEC. Now, I know that within the past week and a half, I made a lot of people very upset and got yelled at online because I went a little bit too far with negativity about Mississippi State basketball as a program. And I take back some of what I said, because some of what I said was stupid. I've put that out there. I put a hand up. It was a bad take in some of the stuff I tried to get into. But I do think you are fighting within a really tough SEC right now, and it's just harder. And it's not like, I think you look at some of what you did under Stansberry, and it's like, yeah, how much is that replicable now consistently? So I feel like it's tough to look at what you're doing right now and expect. I'm not trying to say like this year Jans is this is a failure this year for Jans. I'm not at all. He swung and missed in the portal hard. And no, this year was not a money thing. Like clearly they spent on a roster and it just blew up in their face. Which guess what? When you're portaling hard every single year, sometimes that's going to happen. I just kind of the point I was getting at earlier. I do wonder, are you going to fire him and then the next coach is going to come in and actually do better and actually get you to the tournament and have you the success winning in the tournament? Now, do I like seeing a losing record in conference play every single year? Not at all. Do I like having some of those head-scratching games? So I like the fact that offensively they've been such – defensively it's been a nightmare the last couple of years, but obviously offensively you've never gotten to where you want to be. Do I like that he can't put a guy around Hubbard to be able to play off Hubbard? No. Like, there's plenty of criticisms to have about Jans at this point, and I guess all I'm trying to say is he has done enough, even if it has left a little bit to be desired. He's still done enough to earn another year. Bobby here. I hear you. I was a huge Jans supporter, but not as players. They barely made made those for 3 first-round games. Kind of generational players. Cam gotten worse every year defensively. Yeah, no, look, the defense has fallen off. It's wild to me. Like Howland had some good defensive teams, and I guess like that was good defensive talent clearly on the roster. It's incredible that they've not been able to get that sense. And I could kind of excuse it last year because I saw what he was doing. Like, it was very clear. Last year's team, it was obvious Jans felt we have to get better offensively, which he came out and said publicly. We've got to be able to have a team that can shoot the lights out because we get in these games against Kentucky and Alabama, and our defense falls flat in those games, even when we don't have the shooters to keep up. So we cannot just like good shooting is going to beat great defense. So we got to count on being able to have the shooting. I'm going to go recruit those guys. We still have Cam. We still have Keyshawn. Still have Sean Jones, who's a good defender. I'm going to trust that I can coach up these guys to be good defensively, and we're going to be good offensively, and it's going to be the best team we have. Truth be told, I know like metrics-wise, the offense was like top 25, top 30. Anybody who watched that offense much of the season understands they were not that good offensively. They just had a lot of possessions, so they scored more. And defensively, it was obviously such a nightmare. So it like blew up in his face, and the idea was like this year is going to be a return to what you expect when you go and you get Chor and Quincy Ballard. I think there was an expectation those players are really going to get you back to what you play on, what you would expect from a Chris Jans team. And it just didn't happen. You just completely whiffed on those guys entirely. So, like, yeah, that's a big concern that you've not been able to have that. It's a concern that to this point you've not developed players. I'm excited about what you might have in Jamar, King Grace. I think Sergey Masura has shown some things that I look at him. Sergey is the guy for me. All right. And I'm going to keep talking about a player that we don't like anymore, but Keyshawn Murphy is someone that his first couple of years when he was only getting a few minutes here or there, I would watch Murph play and be like, if he could put it together, he has the highest athletic ceiling of any guy on the court. He is the one guy State has that moves like I don't think this is his future. But there are times you would watch Keyshawn move with the basketball and like at his frame, it's like that looks like an NBA guy. Limited. And then you would see him shoot and it's like, okay, maybe not. And eventually it broke out. Now, obviously, he never fully got to the super high level that you were hoping for, but ended up being a really solid player for State. And having that breakthrough season. I look at Sergey and think he could kind of be the same way and be a bit of that. I think he's got the athleticism to do a game that if he gets it together offensively, he could be a really good player for them down the line. So I think they've got a young nucleus they can work with, that they could have some success with. But at the same time, like those guys, none of them have shown anything to say for sure, oh yeah, these are the guys moving forward. Like he's going to have to hit the portal hard again next year. Are you going to successfully bring in the players to make it work? He struck out now in the portal completely this year, and then last year was kind of iffy. Like, it's a big question. Like, I think he's done enough to earn another year to give him one more opportunity. But at the same time, like, do you have a ton of confidence in it working out long term? I don't know. So you go into next year, and it kind of is what it is. Comment from Trey Clark. And to be clear, I'd be fine firing Jans. I'm just saying, big picture, he's been good here. I mean, look, I'm not fully there because I would not say fire him. I think the big picture part I fully agree with. The firing part, I feel like you might be stepping into something that you're not quite ready for. We'll see. It's been a very frustrating year. Going back to the original comics, we've done all this talking about the men's team. For Purcell and women's basketball, it's really frustrating how, I guess, 2 of the last 3 years down the stretch, they've just completely fallen apart. And I won't pretend that I follow them as closely as I do with the men's team. But they've been in position now, the 2 years that he hasn't gone to the tournament, because they're obviously not going this year, they have been firmly in position to go to the tournament late in the season and then end up losing games down the stretch that they have no business losing. You know, losing to Florida. Texas A&M ended up closing the season hot, but still, Texas A&M was not a very good team. Like, you should have been able to win that game. They took the loss to Missouri early in the season that put them in a rough spot, and they already had a thin margin for error because they didn't play a tough non-con. And the one good team they played in non-conference, Texas Tech, which that's the other thing. They scored like 30-something points in the first quarter against Texas Tech. I had a friend message me, like, that game is the literal encapsulation of the entire Purcell era, that you get these spurts that they look incredible, and then you have these long stretches where it's like, what are you doing? And it just falls apart. That's literally what they did against Texas Tech. And it's like, okay, expound that out over an entire season. That's MSU women's basketball with Sam Purcell as the head coach. Look, he's recruited well. The young talent that is there is great. I know that they're holding on to one of the players. Have already announced that she'll be back. We'll see if they're able to keep the pieces in place. I do wonder, again, if I start talking anything NIL rev share, somebody's going to be like, well, how do you know the numbers? I don't know the numbers. Purely speculating, I do wonder if they are spending women's basketball in the same way that maybe they would have been back when Vic was here. I have no idea. I'm not saying definitively one way or another. But I do look back to last year, this time, when you had all of those players hit the portal who, when you came out of the NCAA tournament last year, you were looking at some of the pieces that could have come back. And you're like, okay, they could end up having a really nice group to work with for this season. All those players at the portal, and NIL was, like, said as a reason why. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing going forward if they're spending as much. I don't know. Again, I don't know the numbers. I'm just purely speculating. I hope I hope Purcell can hold on to this young nucleus that's in place, because it's some talented players. And if you can build around that, you could have a really good team. But you were in position to be a tournament team for this year and just completely faded down the stretch. And, like, that's been a frustrating thing, that they don't find ways to win games. Again, I don't think Purcell's going to get fired, but I think he and Jans both kind of enter next year in hot seat's not the right word, but it'll be a warm seat, right? It'll be kind of, you need to have I think Jans, it probably needs to be, fans will say it needs to be tournament. If not, he'll be gone. I think realistically, if they have a good season and just missed out on the tournament, we're like an NIT type team, I think he would be given another year. Just that's my feeling on it. I think Purcell would probably be the same way if they were an NIT team, which they're going to be. I guess it's a WBIT now is what they call it, which I'm assuming they'll play that this year. He would probably be okay, because it's just kind of going to be what's the pressure to move on. But it also could easily be like, if you don't get him out, like, we're ready to make a change. It definitely a frustrating year for both men's and women's basketball. To close out some of the basketball thoughts, and then we'll hit a break here. Wait, will we hit a break? Yeah, no, we will. A brief break. I'm going to be doing the ad for the merch store. But I started the basketball talk because I was going to bring up Hubbard being third team All-SEC. completely unfair to him. I mean, the guy was the second leading scorer in the SEC by a tenth of a point, multiple 40-point performances this season, had games where he completely took over for Mississippi State. He's third team, which is, again, if you told me second team, I'd have been like, okay, like I still know why he got knocked. But if you want to reward some of the other guys who you felt had more complete seasons, whatever, him being third team is a complete and total slap in the face. But at the same time, I understand why it happened. It's because he played for Mississippi State. And it's State was a bad team this year. And when you're on a bad team, you're not going to get the same credit, same benefit of the doubt. But, that kind of is what it is. I think if he had superstar performances every single game, even playing for Mississippi State, maybe they still end up having him as a first teamer or a second teamer. He got knocked because people look at Hubbard and the perception, if you are not a Mississippi State fan, outside of some people who just enjoy college basketball, like I think a lot of people around the SEC look at Hubbard and just think of him as a shot chucker. They think he is a guy that is just throwing up shots. That's the extent of what he does. He's a volume shooter, and he only scores a lot because he takes a bunch of shots. And I also know for a fact other SEC fan bases, like they hate him because he tries to buy fouls. He'll do the thing with his leg or whatever. It's part of the game. Like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Hubbard is not super popular outside of Mississippi State. I think there's a lot of people. I think they're just normal college basketball enjoyers who look at Hubbard and like, man, that's just a fun player. I think you have a lot of other people around the SEC who don't think that highly of him. And I'm going entirely off of the comments I see from people put on social media from other fan bases. Is that the best way to gauge things? Probably not. But I think there's this reputation around him that, again, he's not as special as some of the numbers look. And people always point to the shooting percentage. Like, oh, well, he only shot, what was it this year? Like 34% from three, 42% from the field. Like, oh, those numbers are nothing special when these guys are shooting, 40% from three and close to 50% from the field. Like, why would you give it to Hubbard? Again, it's just volume shooter. The shot percentages are what they are for Hubbard largely because of the team he plays on. There's no doubt he can be a streaky shooter here or there. He can be a bit up and down. Like, that's always going to be a part of his game. But when you are literally the only guy on the roster who can do anything, you don't have much of a choice but to put the ball in his hands and just say, take the shot. That's all you can do with him. Because there's nobody else they can give the ball to and trust that it's going to work out for him. He has to play hero ball every single night for State to have any sort of a chance at winning. So when you go into the game knowing if I don't score close to 30, we don't have a shot. And again, he scored 42 in the last game and they lost. When that's the mentality going in, then you add on top of it that every team you're facing knows, just don't let him be the one taking the shot. Contest everything, double him. We'll let anybody else shoot. We don't care about them because they can't beat us. He is the only guy that could. You're going to have nights where the shots just aren't falling for him because everything is contested and because all that pressure is on him. And I'm sure somebody would try to say, well, if he was truly great, he'd find a way because it's a dumb mentality sports fans have about things. He basically has to carry State night in, night out. And over the course of an entire season, it's just not realistic. He's going to have nights where he doesn't shoot well. So, unfortunately, that comes back and bites him when it comes to all SEC honors because you look at it, it's like, oh, well, shooting percentage, he had those games where he was, terrible shooting in the game. It's like, yeah, man, like he has no choice but to be the only one to take the shot. So I think voters did not give him the credit that he deserves. Is a lot of it just siding with whoever the teams are at the top of the SEC? Yeah, like tournament teams, naturally their players are going to be the ones who get more credit. But he was absolutely a first-team All-SEC level player this year. And look, to be fair, what is it, 5 or 6 spots? Like, yeah, there's probably more than 5 or 6 guys who are first-team caliber players, and you got to make the cutoff somewhere. But it stings for him. I still don't think he's gotten first-team All-SEC honors. I think he was preseason first-team coming into the year, but I don't think he's gotten those honors yet to this point, despite being a guy who I think is absolutely worthy of it with what he's done to this point. So, disappointing. Apologies if y'all heard like a random noise. There was somebody walking around. But that's fine. We're talking basketball. And I love how I go into this show every single night, like, what on earth am I going to talk about? And then we can I can go 25 minutes talking about something I wasn't even really planning on getting that deep into with hoops. But something that I do want to get into would be the Voice of College Football merch store, where we have some incredible gear for you guys to take a look at. These beautiful VOCFB hats, including the camo. We got the trucker style, dad hats, T-shirts, and I always mention this heavyweight tee. You got that maroon color to rep the Bulldogs with Voice of College Football. We got the polo, mug, sweatshirt, koozie, tumbler. Fantastic gear at the Voice of College Football store. So definitely go check that out. We have the link down in the description to the video. So if you want to rep the Voice of College Football brand, definitely go check out our store. And I've said this every time, StreamYard making, whenever I go from sharing screen to going back to this, I hate having to switch that, but it is what it is. Baseball destroys Lipscomb. The tweet from Six Pack Speak showing the batting averages to this point of the year, that's incredible. It's also incredible watching what's happening to everyone else in the country, minus like Texas, when it comes to college baseball. I guess we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. State still has, the midweeks. I'm going to be in attendance because I'm down here on the coast. So I got tickets for State versus Tulane and Biloxi. Going to be breaking out those beautiful gray script uniforms with the gray hats. Those look very clean. Yeah, definitely. I have a gray State hat that's got the script logo. I feel like I have to wear that. That makes a ton of sense. My seats suck. I waited way too long to get tickets. So I'm in a rough spot because a lot of the better tickets sold quickly and I just hadn't bought them. But going to be in attendance. Glad to get to see the Bulldogs. I love that they do this thing down in Biloxi every year. I wish they would State, Ole Miss, Southern. I wish so bad they would come together and do like a early season event or tournament or whatever down in Biloxi. If like that was the thing that like get LSU involved, like get State, LSU, and Ole Miss. LSU's 2.5 hours away. Like it would be a close trip for them. They would bring, and they have a ton of fans on the coast, a ton of people down here who didn't go to LSU, have never stepped foot on the campus, but they want to cheer for LSU and it's go Tigers. They would come back, pack out. I'm forgetting the name of the ballpark. It used to be MGM. I think it's Keesler Federal now. I don't know for sure. I should know. Like I'm the one who's down here, but I don't remember the name of the ballpark. I would love if they would do an event, get Tulane, get State, LSU, Ole Miss, Tulane, Southern Miss, and then like South Alabama. And like all three SEC teams play all three of the mid-majors. You would have insane crowds every single game. Everybody would travel to it. Like I think that would be absolutely awesome. Maybe the folks who at the ballpark don't want to take on that because they know the type of crowds that would come. But like they were hosting the Sun Belt tournament for a bit, which I know is nothing compared to what we're talking about in terms of the attendance. But I really wish they would take something like that on because I think it'd be a ton of fun, and I would definitely like go to every State game if they had them down here. But I'm glad they play that event. I'm glad that they get a chance to move around and let those of us down on the coast not have to make a 4-hour trek to go see a ball game. So looking forward to the game, looking forward to watching them. And SEC play at Arkansas, who split the series, a 4-game series with Stetson, which was the first time since I think it was 2014 that they've had like a home non-SEC series that they've either lost or tied. It's a weird year. If State can avoid some of that chaos, that would be certainly great to see. But yeah, State's bats off to a super hot start. The pitching is there as well. It's a fun team. It's a fun team. Going to be fun seeing conference play, but going to be fun seeing them in person tomorrow. All right. Let's talk tight ends. So we're going to continue our spring positional previews by talking about the Mississippi State tight end room, which is an interesting group because last year, obviously, you have Seydou Traore the last couple of years. A guy that I think there was a lot of excitement around, a lot of hype around, and it didn't fully materialize the way I think everybody was hoping for. In 2024, Seydou ended up second on the team in receptions with 34, but for 361 yards, had the one touchdown. Really, once Blake Shapen got hurt, I feel like a lot of Seydou's damage happened early in the year, and I can look at it right now because I'm looking at his stats. Not entirely accurate. He definitely had some games. His best game of the year was against Georgia, 5 catches for 51 yards. Actually, no, Arkansas, 5 for 77. I forgot about that. I had a touchdown against UMass. So I guess his production was pretty consistent across the board throughout the season, but it felt like a guy that they could have gotten involved more as like a downfield receiver, and it just didn't happen much. Obviously, the first play of the season this year, or whatever, he gets just a long touchdown. Better year for him this year, 35 for 369, nice, and 5 touchdowns. Was mostly used around the goal line. Obviously, only had really the one big play touchdown. He had 5 for 79 against Southern Miss, 6 for 60 against Texas, 4 for 67 against Ole Miss. I remember that was a nice game for him. Also had games where he was just completely out of it. He either had a really nice game or kind of did nothing. But someone I was always really interested to see how they would use him more of, because a guy that fit that mold as a big-time receiving kind of H-back type player that Jeff Lebby's been very successful with in the past, and you just didn't get it consistently week by week. And I wonder how much of that is the way they were running the offense. We're kind of just putting it all in the hands of Brennan Thompson, Anthony Evans. Those are our weapons. Also, Fluff and Devon Booth are guys that you would have as higher up on the scale. So if those are our top 4 offensive weapons, why would we highlight getting the ball to Seydoux more? That's probably part of the idea. But it maddened me the number of times you look at this offense run at other programs, including places Lebby has run it, and you get some of these plays where the tight end is just wide open. And not even wide open down the field, like wide open for dump-offs, wide open for checkdowns, wide open on screen passes. And they just didn't run a ton of that. The pop pass thing, that's one that infuriated me. Seydoux gets the touchdown in the bowl game. I guess it was the 2-point conversion play, like the pop pass from Camario. And it's like, yeah, I've been begging for you guys to run this all year, where he fakes blocking, then releases upfield. That's like a veer and shoot Briles offense staple. They have run that for years, and other offenses have run it as well, where they do the hard play action fake, the tight ends inserting like I'm going up the block, and then he just releases vertical. Like I remember State ran it in the spring game in 2024, and I put it out on Twitter like, yeah, get ready to see this a lot. Like, they're going to run this play probably every other game, if not every game. They tried it like once the entire season, and then this past year, it was like once or twice the whole year that they ran it, and they score on one of them. I don't fully understand. There was a couple times I saw Lebby try to get Seydoux involved in ways that I thought would be really effective for him, and it just wasn't working for him. Maybe that's a reflection on Seydoux, that he was not as good of a weapon as maybe we were thinking. But a guy who I thought had a chance to really thrive in this offense and never fully saw it materialize. Tight end room as a whole, you just didn't get much, though, after Seydoux. Sam West was your number 2, 5 catches, 41 yards, had the touchdown against Texas. That was easily his best game, the 13-yard touchdown reception. Did have 2 catches against Missouri, but other than that, was not a guy who got involved super heavily, the transfer out of Indiana, but was the number 2 tight end. Whenever State went 12 personnel, pretty much it was going to be Seydoux and Sam. It was Sam being the guy that they were mostly focusing on as the kind of the inline blocker, a little bit of a better blocker. But the little bit we saw of him as a route runner and as a receiver, I thought he moved well. Not a guy – I think they did target him deep downfield at least once in the game. So someone they're comfortable doing that with. But obviously, not going to be the same type of receiving threat, but a guy who seems like a solid player, but didn't get highlighted all that much. Cam Ball, 2 catches, 12 yards. And obviously he transfers out. Max Reese, 2 catches for 1 yard. And he's on the way out as well. Just didn't get a lot out of the tight end room. But of those guys, the only one coming back is Sam West, who, again, kind of just showed you a couple flash plays, but you didn't get much from. So the tight end room is an interesting one going into spring because you don't have a true clear-cut starter. We think we know who the guy is, but he hasn't done anything to this point that you can fully say he's your dude there. Your depth pieces are guys who are new. I think tight ends 2 through 5 I think tight ends 2 through 5 on this roster are new faces to the program. So there's a lot of new, and could be interesting, could work out for them. We'll start with the number one, and I kind of already mentioned him a little bit, and that's Sam West. Again, the few flashes you saw last year, the touchdown catch against Texas, a couple other opportunities there, a couple blocking reps here or there, you saw potential with him. You saw a guy that you think could work out well for you. Got good size at 6'4", 250. Has got the frame to be an inline blocker, which that's kind of how they used him more last year. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, when they went 12 personnel, they were putting Sadu and West on the field together. And West, if either of them was going to go in line, it was going to be West, which makes sense. Sadu's kind of your move tight end. West, the bigger body guy who can block in line. And I thought showed you some moments where you could be positive about what he has. Now, still has something to work on as a blocker because I think out in space, he struggled. They tried to use him as a lead blocker on like screen passes. Just didn't work out all that well. A lot of that was early in the season. Maybe got a little bit better as the year went along, but that's a place he still has to grow. Maybe at his size, that's not a place you want to put him in. You kind of want him have him more in tight to the formation and just occasionally use him to leak out. But definitely more of your physical inline type body. But I thought showed enough fluidity as a runner that you could get him involved in the passing game a little bit. It's just we've seen so little of it. He might be back more the way back in the day when Baylor was running this offense, the way that they would kind of treat the tight end is Art Briles basically wanted a sixth offensive lineman on the field. He wanted a guy who was just, I'm up here to be a bully at the line of scrimmage and really help give us an advantage in the run game. And we'll throw some sort of an RPO or a pop pass or a play action to this guy once or twice a game. But that's all the involvement we're doing. I mean, they wouldn't even put him out as a check down option when they were taking shots downfield. That's one of the things. When you watch Levy, when they're taking a vertical shot, the tight ends almost always like check release. They like look for, stay in to protect briefly, see if they got pressure to pick up. And if not, they release out and are looking for a check down. Briles back in the day, it was sort of automatic. You're staying in the block. Like, I don't care if they're sending pressure or not. You're here as an extra blocker. I wonder if West is a guy Levy would do a little bit more of that with, where that's sort of his role. I want this big physical piece at the line of scrimmage. Again, like I don't think he was a dominant blocker for State last year, but he showed you some flashes that you think, okay, he could build off that. And maybe he takes a step forward as a receiver. And if he does, and you've got a guy who can be a really good blocker and also be a valuable threat in the receiving game, well, that just opens up a lot of more opportunities for what you can do in the offense. I think there's some talent, there's some potential. He just hasn't fully shown it yet. Comment here from Trey Clark. We didn't seem to target any tight end in the portal. Are we happy with what we got plus the freshman coming in? Well, there is a portal tight end. And I know this hasn't gotten talked about a ton, but State did add a tight end out of the portal. That's the next guy we'll talk about. And that's Riley Williams, who comes over from Oregon State. 6'5", 250, redshirt junior. Played at IMG Academy out of high school, was a 4-star tight end, signed with Miami, and was really productive. I say that. As a freshman, had some opportunities because there were some injuries to Miami's tight end room, and it allowed him to get on the field a little bit earlier than anticipated back as a true freshman. I'm trying to pull up the stats now. And ended up like having a decent campaign. 8 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. And I know that won't blow you away, but you look at some of the plays he made, a lot of his catches went for good yardage. 1 catch for 18 yards, 1 catch for 22. Kind of became the number 3 tight end the next year, but again, it was big plays. 27 yards on a reception, 24 on a reception, 30, had like another 20-something yard reception against Virginia Tech, 29 yards against Duke, 7 catches for 115 yards on the season. So didn't get involved in a lot, but when he did get involved, it was big plays. This last year at Oregon State only played 2 games, got injured and missed most of the season. He caught 1 pass for 15 yards against Fresno. But again, 1 catch that goes for 10-plus yards. When he does get the ball, it tends to be a bigger play, and that's because he is that bigger body, typically keeping him in sort of as a blocking type player. But he's got he's a pretty natural receiver for his size. I won't tell you that he's like a great runner, but he's just kind of a big, hulking physical presence when he does have the ball in his hands. And look, can go up and make some nice grabs for what it's worth. Like can go up and make the over-the-shoulder type catch to haul it in. Now, for his size, I don't know that he's the best blocker. I think that's something that's going to have to develop with him for sure. But I think, again, there's talent there. He's kind of in the same realm as a Sam West, where he's shown more as a receiver than West has. I think West has probably shown a little bit more as a blocker. But they're both big body guys who you can play in line, who give you a little bit of both. And I imagine those are probably your top two guys early in the season. And if one of them can really emerge as a true weapon, then you really open things up offensively. Now, Trey had asked about the freshman coming in. And I think that's part of the reason why, yes, they did bring in one portal tight end, but they didn't go heavy in the portal. You have a trio of freshmen coming in that I think they're very excited about. And a guy that I've talked a lot about because I'm really intrigued by what he could be in this offense right away. And that's Zayon Cotton coming in out of Grenada, 6'5", 230. So he's already put on a little bit of weight since getting here to Mississippi State. Was able to, I know he went through bowl practices, so got those opportunities to start off, which I think is going to be really beneficial for him. Lengthy, big frame, a guy who's playing X receiver in high school. Put him out wide, just let him run vertical, throw it up to him. He was a big play threat, a vertical ball threat. Again, was built like a receiver and runs well too. He's got some speed to him. Definitely a guy that you talk about the mold of an athlete at tight end and a receiving threat at tight end. That's what Zayon Cotton is going to be. Now, as a blocker, he's willing, but was not asked to do much at Grenada. And when he did, it was kind of just okay. That's the part that has to come along. And that's the part that even if you were to say, we're not going to ask you to be a guy to go block in line, we're never going to put you in a three-point stance. We're never going to tell you that you have to come out of that stance and be blocking a defensive end. We're going to use you to get up to the second level, block linebackers, block safeties, be a blocker out wide on screens. That's how we're going to use you. And I think as a freshman, you could definitely work him in that way and it'd be just fine. But even then, that's a part of his game that's got to develop a little bit. But he's a really good athlete. And he's a guy that could absolutely be a mismatch and create problems over the middle of the field. Maybe even more so than what you had out of Seydu, because he's got a bigger frame than Seydu does. And if you can get him to where the blocking is just adequate as a freshman, and you want it to be something where he comes into the game and it's not a question whether or not they're okay, he can be on the field and they're still going to be able to run the football, the run menu is not reduced to the point that it's like, okay, well, we know they're not running blank because he's in the game. If you can get him to where he can just do enough, I think there's a chance for this to be a really fun player for State to work with the next few years. Something I've talked about a couple times. And I reference Ian Boyd, America's War Game, quite a bit. I think he does a great job discussing football X's and O's and football schematic strategy. And one of the things Ian talked about is if when it comes to maximizing an offense, you pair the style of tight end you have to the style of quarterback that you have. Because it all within a spread system, spread offense all comes down to being able to beat a box with even numbers. If the defense is going to have, if we're going to have equal numbers in the box, we need to be able to run the football effectively on that. Really, it's run the football effectively. If we have even numbers in the box, we hand the football off and have success running the football. And if you're going to do that, you either need a tight end who can handle his own blocking against whoever in the box, or two, you need a quarterback who can run, and therefore you add that extra hat in the run game. So while a lot of people think of like when you got a quarterback who's a great passer, they think, well, we want a tight end who's a great pass catcher. A lot of these spread offenses, it's almost better if that quarterback can't really run that well. It's almost better that you have a tight end that's a good blocker, because now you're maximizing your run game when you do hand the football off. We'll let the pass game go to the receivers. On the flip side, while a lot of people would think if you have a running quarterback, you want a guy in there who's going to be a masher and a big-time blocker, it actually can be more beneficial if you put a weapon in at tight end, a guy who's more of a receiving threat, because now you're going to be able to run the football effectively thanks to the quarterback's legs. Can we now get the tight end involved as a weapon in the pass game? So we know you got Camario as a great runner. And I know I talked about, the Baylor teams back in the day, they didn't really care about these rules. They just said, we don't care what look we get. We want tight ends who can just maul and be big-time blockers so that we're always going to know we're physical in the run game. And maybe Levy goes back to that. He may not have a choice given the offensive line situation. Like, that may just be what they have to do. But I think there's also a world with Cotton specifically because of what he can be as a receiver. The opportunity is there that if you show that you can run the football effectively between Camario and then whoever's at running back and you're blocking it well enough with your offensive line, if Cotton is someone who, when you do ask him to block, can be adequate, because you got to be able to do that to get on the field. If you have him as a big-time receiving threat to add in, that becomes a really intriguing thing for the offense. I'm really excited about his potential. I think a lot of people feel he probably needs a year to really acclimate, get his body right. We'll see. But I think there's a chance for him to contribute right away. Now, tight ends who have not gotten talked about a lot, and I'll be honest, coming into this in prep, I was not really prepared to say much about Adam Land, who's your freshman out of Panama City in Florida, 6'3", 230. I wonder if I think they might be a bit generous on the 6'3", because I don't know if he's quite that tall. He might be kind of your best of both worlds, though, because when you watch his and we're going off a huddle, which I know is a highlight tape. It's not your full game film. But you watch the plays he put up from his time in high school as a senior, kind of has some good ability, like both as a receiver and as a blocker. As a receiver, I thought he was he's got some quickness to him. I thought he was a good runner in space, good ball skills as a receiver, understands just how to find open space really well. I thought he was a talented pass catcher. Used differently than Cotton, because Cotton was a guy that they were flexing out and sending vertical. They sent Adam Land vertical, but it was more kind of leaking him out from the slot or like off fake screens and stuff like that. More work in the middle of the field, more working quick game underneath, but really good run after catching those opportunities as well. Physical blocker. Now, they would put him in line, get down to the three-point stance. Really wouldn't have him block defensive ends. They'd still have him kind of get up and get to the second level against linebackers. But a lot of blocking in space against outside backers or nickel corners, like apex defenders, blocking on safeties, just squaring up, knocking those guys to the ground, and then looking for more work. An aggressive and attacking blocker in space. And in space is something that matters to me because, like I mentioned with Sam West, one of the things that I thought held him back last year was when State tried to have him as a blocker out in space, he just missed. Adam Land showed a little bit of that. Now, look, high school athletes versus what you're seeing in the SEC, where the outside backers and nickel corners are running 4-4. It's a little bit of a different deal. But I think he's got some good ability as a blocker, while also could be an effective receiver. He might be one of the more underrated players in this class. What led me to, there's a guy on Gene's page who does a breakdown of the class every year and just gives his thoughts. And he talked about, he thought Land was one of the more underrated players State signed. And then I finally went and watched. I kind of agree. I think Adam Land is a guy that could sneaky get heavily involved for State in the coming years. Could be a special player. And we'll see what that looks like this year. He's enrolled early. So how does that work out? Well, he's going to have an opportunity for sure. I name dropped him on accident. Luke Hutchinson, 6'3", 235 out of Nashville. This guy is your physical blocker type, inline, wide tight end. Can definitely still be a receiving threat, but this is a guy that projects mostly to be your, this guy's putting his hand in the dirt, and you're going to ask him to block defensive ends. You're going to ask him to be a lead blocker, that type of stuff. Kind of your real physical piece that you're bringing in. How much is that going to help him as a true freshman? Are you going to get on the field that way? It's possible. If the guys in front of you aren't good blockers, maybe you will. But this is probably a guy that you're developing in that way down the line. It's an interesting freshman class of tight ends. You've got your one guy who you look at as like you're just pure receiving threat in Zayon Cotton. You got the one guy in Hutchinson who I think is probably your big-time blocker. And then you got Land, who's a little bit of both, which leads me, again, really excited about Adam Land. Sneaky is a guy to watch in this class in the coming years. And I don't want to just completely, Joseph Skiffworth coming in as a redshirt freshman, 6'5", 225, bit light to be after a redshirt freshman year. Look, an opportunity for him. I can't tell you I know a ton about him, but there's an opportunity for sure with an open room. There's some young talent here. I know you look at Sam West, Riley Williams, you're probably not just blown away by what you got, but I think they brought an impressive class of tight ends into the program. These are guys who I think could develop into a really good group for Mississippi State down the line. I was about to say whether it's in this offense or another one, because we don't. Let's be honest, we don't know what the future holds with some of the questions for this football program right now. But I'm excited about this group, and I'm really excited to see in the spring what we're hearing about the tight ends, because I think I feel confident one of these freshmen is going to get involved one way or another. One of these freshmen is going to play a role in that tight end room as a true freshman, and really curious to see who it's going to be. Again, I've talked a lot about Zayon Cotton, but I've come away really excited about Adam Land after some of what I've watched of him. I think it's an interesting group. I don't think it's a group that you need to have big-time players. I think a tight end could obviously be an X factor for an offense for sure. But with what you have at receiver, with what you have at running back, with what you got at quarterback, if you can kind of figure out the rest, you're probably going to be pretty solid. You don't necessarily have to have a guy that's a matchup nightmare at tight end, or even have a guy that's just an All-American blocker. But you definitely want someone who can make an impact, and I think State's going to have an opportunity. I feel like one of these young guys, again, by the end of the year, we're going to see a lot, but we're going to learn a lot in spring to see what this group can truly turn into. That'll about do it for me today. Fun conversation, getting into some of the big picture basketball talk. It was, I say fun, it's kind of depressing that we're talking about MSU basketball in the state that it is, but it's just kind of the situation that we're in. But definitely another fun episode. Glad to do it. We'll be back on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Central Time for the call-in show. We are bringing the call-in show back. I know I was told last week that we want to have that, so opportunity for you guys to come be part of the stream. If there's any more MSU news, we'll be sure to hit it in that episode. But yeah, if you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notifications on so you do know when we do go live. As always, swing your sword.
Hey, y'all. This is Grant Sassery of LSU at the Voice of College Football Network. I'm here today to announce that the Voice of College Football Network now has its official website. It's been uploaded so you can look at all the latest news and content from the Voice of College Football Network. You can also look at different forums, channels, shows, and it has to show all the show schedules right here and the host. Make sure to check out the Voice of College Football's new website at vocfb.com. Once again, vocfb.com.